Welcome to Politics News Wolf US channel. An incredible operation took place in Bakhmut where the fiercest conflicts of the Ukrainian war took place. The Ukrainian army has once again proven what a potential army it is while the Russian army's efforts to take backwards. The Russian troops unable to surpass the presence of the Ukrainian defense forces are now depleted. Russia has focused all its efforts on this small industrial city in Ukraine. Although the Russian army is making partial advances in back moves in most places, it is unable to pass the Ukrainian defense units. So much so that Ukrainian special forces sent to the region also pose a great threat to the Russian troops. Here in this video, we will tell you about a critical success of the Ukrainian special forces and information about the rest of the war. Let's examine the developments in the Bakhmut war and the general outlines of the Ukrainian war together. In the last 2 weeks, the Russian Federation has lost about 4,500 soldiers of the Wagner Group, private military company fighters and regular armed forces killed and wounded in and around Bakhmut, part of the Russian forces, and was redeployed to the Bakhmut area from the Avdiivka direction to strengthen the offensive potential according to the main operations department of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The Russian army continued the offensive in the central part of Bakhmut and towards the settlements of Boka and even Sk to encircle the city from the north and from the south. The Russian army began its operations to encircle the city from the north and they advanced into Bodanivka and even Ivsk, where they came face to face with the Ukrainian defense units. To the minor surprise of the Ukrainian army, Ukrainian Special Forces units stationed in Boka and Sk. When the Russian army went head-to-head with the Ukrainian defense forces, the Special Forces circled behind the Russian troops in both directions, caught between two fires. The Russian troops could not hold out any longer, and the Ukrainian army killed about 2,500 Magna fighters and soldiers of the regular armed forces of the Russian Federation. Some soldiers surrendered to Ukrainian special forces and were then sent to the Kiev region to be used for prisoner exchange. The conclusion of the operation of the Russian army in this way shows us that it is slowly losing its effectiveness. In Bakhmut, the Russian army attempts 40 to 50 attacks every day in the BMU region, making more than 500 attacks using all available weapons, but without any tangible success from any of these attacks. At the same time, the military political leadership of the Russian Federation does not take into account significant personnel loss. Mobilized soldiers in some units of the Russian army largely refuse to participate in active military operations and carry out brutal reprisals against those who reject their commanders. In particular, they are thrown into pits to be subjected to physical and psychological pressure and torture. Chambers are arranged for the most disobedient. The Russian army continues offensive operations in the direction of Lyman to reach the administrative border of the Luhan, and he's trying to push back the Ukrainian troops to the right bank of the Zarobets River on the Maka-Taurus border. The Russian army has increased the use of operational, tactical, and army aviation to strike the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Additional air reconnaissance equipment was recorded for the redeployment of motorized rifle and artillery units. The personnel of the Bars detach, as well as for strengthening the grouping of the Russian occupation troops in the indicated direction. At the same time, according to data, The Russian army stationed in the China enclave was demoralized and cancelled their vacation due to a possible attack by the armed forces of Ukraine. Also, the command of the Russian troops orders the recovery of ammunition in this direction. Russian troops in the Marina and Akka directions do not cease to try to seize control of the settlements. About 20 to 40 attack attempts are taking place in each of the indicated directions. In these attacks, the Russian army fires up to 200 cannons on average. After unsuccessful attempts to attack on the Allier direction and in the Donetsk region, and after significant losses, the Russian army resorted to attacks on the positions of the Ukrainian troops near Allier and Steve. At the same time, as a result of significant losses among the personnel of the 155th and 40th Separate Marine Infantry Brigades during the fighting in the Villa, the mobilized soldiers and Wagner units were redeployed in the indicated direction. The Russian army continues to bombard Ukrainian troops in the Zia and Khan directions. Missiles and bomb attacks were carried out in the region of the cities of Khan and Zia. The Russian army has strengthened its forces and equipment in certain directions to prevent the attack of the Ukrainian armed forces, but no one is sure that Russia will be able to achieve success with these steps. The Ukrainian official said this week that Moscow is expecting a new spring counterattack from Kiev, that Russia cannot sustain more than one offensive at the same. Ukraine's latest assessment confirms experts' long-held predictions that Russia cannot currently conduct multiple offensive operations simultaneously. As Russia prepares to counterattack Ukraine to retake Russian-controlled areas. The bloody battle for the eastern Ukraine's industrial city of BMO rages on. Russia has been massing troops in the region since the summer of 2022. The capture of the war-ravaged city will be Russia's first major victory on the battlefield in more than 6 months. At the same time, Russian troops are preparing to block Ukraine's advance in the Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea, which was illegally annexed by Russian President Vladimir Putin back in 2014. Russian forces are fortifying the incoming satellite images show Russian forces building an extensive network of defensive fortifications on the Black Sea Peninsula. So what about the attacks of the Russian army? Frankly, given the state of the Russian army, it is quite difficult to say anything about it. There are long-standing considerations that the Russian army in its current form cannot conduct large-scale, simultaneous offensive operations on multiple axes. The operations in Bakhmut the other day proved to us the reality of these assets. The Kremlin said it has yet to undertake the necessary realignment of the war effort to support large-scale Russian force formation and effectively exploit economies of scale. We see Russians striving to re-establish forces such as crypto mobilization, leaning on undeveloped parts of Russia to create volunteers, relying on new small PMCs, and putting pressure on various Russian government entities to sponsor and pay hiring campaign. An elite group of Russian businessmen and leaders allegedly provided financial support to the military's efforts to build power among elements of the Russian state. The Kremlin billed the Russian state energy company Gazprom for its volunteer recruitment efforts in the Donetsk region, offering volunteers a monthly salary of 400,000 rubles. Among the measures Putin has taken to expand enlistment efforts for his war in Ukraine is the signing of a decree, removing the upper age limit for Russian National Guards stationed in areas of Ukraine under the control of Russian forces. The decision to continue to rely on financial incentives for voluntary recruitment with both one-time payments and accrued lifetime benefits means a huge burden for the Russian economy, which will create huge, long-term structural costs and cannot be sustainable indefinitely. Such a step will not support Russia's war effort. While the Russian army already has so many losses in Ukraine and it may lose important cities it controls during the Ukrainian offensive. As a matter of fact, what happened in Bakhmut the other day is the most obvious proof of this. So what do you think about this subject? Thank you for watching the video. If you find it useful, please comment and share the video for us. It will make our channel more known. See you in the following videos. Thank you very much.